All right, greetings educators. This is Lecture 2 of Module 1. I want to talk to you today about backwards design. This is a curriculum development and design process that I came across a few years ago, and it changed my professional career, and so I want to talk to you a little bit about it today. But first, let me give you some background about how it changed my career. In 2005, I began working in online learning, and although I was called an instructional designer, I was actually working more in the capacity of an ed tech. And what we were doing is faculty would bring me items like their quizzes and the exams, and I would convert those into the learning management system, or I would take their assignments and put them into, at that time we were using WebCT, and then we would take publisher content, textbook publisher content, and put it into our learning management systems. And somewhere when I began my master's courses in 2007, just early on, in one of my classes, I was required to work with this book called Understanding by Design. And within that Wiggins and McTee book is a concept called backwards design. And it was really profound to me, and it changed my professional career to make me start thinking about what we were doing in online learning. Instead of just modifying face-to-face classes to the online system, and just hodgepodge throwing things in there, putting up something for students to assess student learning, I really began to think about how we could design curriculum and plan learning, and not just course-wise but program-wise, and how everything would connect together. And so I want to bring that concept to you today. If you've heard of backwards design before, yay! I'm glad. I look forward to hearing your discussion about it in the discussion question for this module. If you haven't, I hope you learned something, and I hope that you learn to love the concept like I do. So, what is backwards design? Backwards design is a three-part process where you, as an instructor, will identify the desired results that you want, and then you need to determine what your acceptable evidence of learning is to go with that. And then you begin to learn, you begin to plan learning experiences and instruction around that. And so it's really important that this three-part process works in conjunction to each other. And to me, the most important thing about it is step one is identifying your desired results. What are the results? And then what is an acceptable evidence of learning? Okay, so let's talk about process one. Process one, identifying the desired results. That begins by asking questions, and those questions can be things like, what should my students know when they're done? What should my students be able to understand when they're done going through this? What do I want them to accomplish? And then you can also ask questions of what is worthy of understanding out of this content. I'm not going to go through this whole slide because we're going to talk a little bit more about it as I go through it. But I hope that you take some time to understand this slide and get to know it, because it can be the catalyst for putting this process together for designing a great course and planning learning activities. Okay, so when you're identifying the desired learning results that you want, and you're designing courses, many times faculty have come into my office and they begin to look at their course, and what they've done is they've looked at their learning objectives, and then they're taking the method of teaching, which is online, and they're creating activities, and they're using materials, and they're preparing for their class before they've ever got to the assessment process. I argue that you need to move that assessment process up and think about what types of assessment, whether it's formative or summative, that you need to implement that will help you evaluate student comprehension. And then that drives what your activities and materials and preparation will need to be. Okay, so the second phase in backwards design is called determining acceptable evidence of learning. How will you know if your students have achieved the desired results you want as proof of acceptable evidence of learning? Will it be through the use of authentic assessment? If you will look at this slide, authentic assessment determines an acceptable level of learning. Or you could say that by determining what an acceptable evidence of learning is in your course, you can create authentic assessment. So they work in conjunction with each other and they equal the same thing. So where does authentic assessment begin? It begins with questions. So what the ultimate question is what assessment activity can I adopt to determine if students are attaining the highest level learning possible? And what is the highest level learning possible? Well, Bloom's taxonomy gives us a really good roadmap to what we should be trying to achieve. This is not the only theory out there about learning, but to me it's the easiest. I shouldn't say it's the easiest. To me, it's I guess that is the right word. It's the easiest for me. It's the one that I have identified with the most and tried to adopt in my personal teaching habits. Bloom's taxonomy starts with thinking about authentic forms of assessment through action words. And if you'll see at the top of the list, this should be every teacher's desired level of student demonstration of learning. I want my students to be able to create. I want them to be able to construct. I want them to be able to plan and design. That's creating. That's that action word up there at the top. I also want them to be able to judge and discuss. And in my rubric, I ask them to debate in the discussion questions that I have in online learning. And so the point is I want to try to get to the top level of Bloom's taxonomy to get my students learning at the highest capacity. So I teach online. I teach a lot of technology classes, and so I could use Bloom's digital pyramid to guide me in the design of those courses. There are many free and available tools out there that can help you align your learning objectives and authentic assessment with Bloom's taxonomy. There's Bloom's taxonomy for sociology, Bloom's taxonomy for history. I could just go on and on. Google is a great resource to find those things. Of course, like I said before, Bloom's is not the only thing out there, but it's a great road and guide and to help lead you where you need to go. I'd like for you to take a moment and reflect upon the tools that you could use in your courses to fall within Bloom's taxonomy of learning at the highest level. Is it creating a project based around a certain time in history? Is it about creating a project that's about a certain sociological perspective? Anyway, take time to reflect about those things. The last stage in backwards design is stage number 3, and it is the planning of learning experiences and instruction. And you can begin with this by asking several questions of yourself. One of those questions could be, what in enabling knowledge and skills will my students need in order to perform effectively and achieve the desired results that I'm looking for? What activities can I adopt that will equip students with the needed knowledge and skills that they need? In light of my learning objectives, what will I need to teach, and how should I teach it best to reach the desired goals, the learning objectives of my class? What are the materials and resources that are best suited to accomplish these goals? So planning learning experiences and instruction can begin by asking these questions. The thing that I'd like to leave you with before I close this lecture, it sums up the process of backwards design. The specifics of instruction, i.e. choices about teaching methods, sequence of lessons and resource materials can be successfully completed only after we identify the desired results in assessment and consider what they imply. Teaching is a means to an end. Having a clear goal helps to focus our planning and guide purposeful action with the intended results. Thus, the whole thing begins with understanding assessment, authentic forms of assessment for the highest level of learning, and then designing your course to it. Okay, educators, that's the end of this lecture. I hope you learned a little bit about backwards design. I put some more information about it in your resource page for this module. There's a required reading to go along with it. I hope you have a great learning experience with this module. I will see you in Module 2.